Okay, just like the solo for blues for Symmy used the symmetrical diminished scale, so does the quartal ideas or the harmonic ideas that we just saw in the previous segment. What was happening was all the harmonies were derived from the symmetrical diminished scale, and they were also constructed with a consistent formula, and that is fourths. Now we've been seeing quartal harmony examples right from Super Dom blues all the way through. We've been seeing it through everything, and they've been working really well for us up here in the upper strings, and you're going to see even more of them in the altered stormy blues, where we're going to start playing zones of fourths, but we'll get to that in a second. What we have going on here is altered fourth sounds. Now there's a bunch of ways that we can analyze these chords, but we're going to simply do it this way. We're going to look at the scale that we're taking it from, symmetrical diminished, and see how we construct these things. Let's take apart the symmetrical diminished scale first. Now, symmetrical, the term we defined clearly in the soloing section, where we have this cyclical concept that repeats itself with the same notes but just in a different order. So this holds true for the half-whole scale, or the symmetrical diminished scale. Half-whole is indicating the fact that the scale is built out of a series of consistent half-step to whole steps. Now these scales, there's another one called the diminished scale, which is a whole half. These scales are from the octatonic series of scales. The 7-tone scales that we all learn, major and their modes, and melodic minor and harmonic minor and all that stuff, is all heptatonic, 7-note scales. These are octatonic. They have 8 notes before they get to the octave. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and then the octave. So that creates a little bit of a problem here when we do what we're going to do with the fourths. But let's talk about why we're doing what we're doing here. The top note voicings of these little 3-note chordal fragments is what I'm focusing in on. So that allows me to concentrate on the altered tones to be put on the bottom of the chord. This is another concept that Dave Fusinski turned the world onto, or at least my world, is that sound, you know, of having the altered stuff on the bottom. Kind of sneaks it in there, while the top can be used to make more musical sounding voice leading. And that's exactly what's going on here in Blues for Symmy for the accompaniment. Is if you play the accompaniment, the top note by itself, it's this mean minor blues line, you know, like that's the melody that's going on at the top of this. But while that cool minor blues line is being played on the top, they have this dark altered harmony on the bottom. It's a very cool way to do this. So here's how the chords were built. We have D symmetrical diminished, or D half whole. So I'm concentrating on the top notes. So I'm going to start here with the D on the top, since we're in D half whole. A fourth below is A, and then a fourth below that, diatonically to the symmetrical diminished scale, is E flat. Now, what that means is when you build a chord scale of any type, you have to follow the notes, or you have to take what's dictated to you by the scale. So in the scale, that's the fourth below A, is E flat. In a D Dorian scale, that would have been E natural, but in symmetrical diminished, it's E flat. So that's where we get this altered sound. Now, since it's symmetrical, whatever happens here happens 3 frets away, or a minor third away. It doesn't have to be horizontal. You can do it vertically. So you really have built half of your chord scale already, since this is a symmetrical idea. It's similar to the way that we did or discovered the 7 flat 5s in the Fusey blues, or Fusey the Lydian loader, where we had the 7 flat 5s, and we know that they're a tritone away from each other. You know, 2 versions, or 1 version of it, and any other version of it was also a tritone away. Put them together, there's your 4 chords, but there's only 2 types, or 2 fingerings, or 2 interval combinations. Same thing here. We have this type, or this interval combination, and we're going to have this one. Now, here's what I was talking about before with the tricky part. Since this is an 8-note scale, it kind of throws us a curveball when we're creating quartal harmony, or yeah, quartal harmony with the stacked 4s. If we did that, say we're looking at it from here from D. We go a fourth above. As the scale dictates, that's supposed to be a G sharp or an A flat. Now if we go a fourth above this note, what we get is an octave. And that's not what we're looking for. Even though this is truly fourths, augmented fourths, that's not the sound we're looking for. We don't want that octave on the top and the bottom. Doesn't sound as cool as this. So the other form, compared to this, is an augmented fourth and a major third on top. If you want to be technical, we can call this a diminished fourth. So it still is quartal harmony, even though it's kind of coming from the back door, so to speak. So our chords are constructed of augmented fourths and thirds combined, and then the next one is an augmented fourth on the bottom and a perfect fourth on the top. Another cool thing that's going on here is the fact that there's an interval that you don't normally hear in any sort of dominant blues scenario, and that is the major 7. The major 7 is the cool interval, or the interval that makes another altered chord sound so good, the 7 sharp 9. That's what's hidden inside a 7 sharp 9 is a major 7th interval. So inside of this quartal harmony, this first one I played, sitting right there, there's a major 7. So there's all kinds of elements in here that are helping make this whole approach work and sound good, even though you're really playing something. It's pretty aggressive. So the next thing to check out is the fact that if you want to keep doing this with the 4 and the 5 chord, it's really handing you the voice leading, because the difference between the symmetrical diminished scales is only a half step when it comes to this. And that is in direct relation to the fact that the difference between the tritones inside dominant chords in your series of 1, 4, 5 are separated by half steps. So let's look at that before we look at the scales and how we built the altered chords. Here's D7. And here's G7. Well, the tritone that makes up these chords, though in different order, 3 and flat 7, and then flat 7 to 3, they're only a half step away. Now, if you're studying this course, you probably already know this, but this is something we want to make sure that everybody knows and have this clear so you can see what's going on with the voice leading that's going to happen from these symmetrically diminished chords. So, D7 down to G7, tritone only goes a half step. D7 to the 5 chord, A7, the tritone goes up a half step. So within this whole step, you have your whole series of changes. Same thing here. It gets just a little bit harder to see because it's not as obvious. But here's D half whole. Well, let's go over here to G. I'm going to play G half whole. Now look at that zone I just played right there. Well, here's D half whole, and here's a piece of G half whole. Now remember, these are all symmetricals. So whatever happens here can be moved all over the place. Look at A half whole. Now here's the zone of the A half whole or symmetrical diminished scale compared to D, compared to G. See, it's the same thing. Here's your D, half step down is G, half step above is A. So that goes for your chords. If this is a D symmetrical diminished quartal harmonic device, well then this is G and this is A. So what we can do here is, just to even get this going, is play just with this and play, rhythmically, very sparse, of course, and just go through the changes and play just with this chord, just as well as you can do it with the dominant chords. So let's do that against the track. Let's take just this piece here, and play just this chord and go through the changes. So this is what it would sound like. Use some slides to break it up. See, it resolves that tension. 5 chord tension. So see how that works? Now, the 4 chord sounded pretty rough, and, the one chord comes up and resolves that tension, just like the 5 chord creates a climax, and this time through tension, and it was resolved at the 1 chord. And the resolving quality was given to us by this top note. Remember, this is what we're focusing on, really the top note, not the bottom. You know, a good example, or the chord that really broke this open, or introduced me to this idea was this. Check this out. This right here. This is a D7 sharp 9 flat 9, and the altered tones are both on the bottom. Here's your 3rd and your 1 for a D, F sharp and D, and down here is F and E flat, the sharp 9 and flat 9. All the altered ingredients are on the bottom, while the top, you know, more of the candy part of the chord, contains the root and the 3rd. So really, there's the consonant sounding part of the useful parts, and then here's the dirt on the bottom. Well, that chord is what was the catalyst, served as the catalyst to get this idea going. So, taking those top notes and applying them to a cool melody, that's how the Blues for Symmy chordal arrangement was put together. So let's run through that and see you know, what exactly is going on here. And remember, you're going to see the same voicings, same voicing shapes, because there is only 2 shapes between you know, what could be created in the symmetrical diminished scale, and I'm using the same scale for the 3 chords. So you're going to see the same shapes all over the place. They just might be, you know, half-step relationships from each other. So it's very, very tight voice leading, and it's got that very cool, dense, rough sound throughout the whole thing. So let's just go through the track and just play, you know, a derivative of what you heard in the previous segment. So let's start out high. Let's answer that on the 4. Five. Resolve. It's such a great, gritty, deep sound. So you can easily inject this into your common 1, 4, 5, and just soup it up and just give it, you know, some kind of. You know what? Before we close this out, why don't we play a little bit of inside 1, 4, 5, and then throw those elements in there. So we're going to do it like a call and response. So first, we'll play some inside stock 7s. You know, we'll keep it real simple. So you'll have this, and then we'll get to this. Then we'll throw in, you know, we'll get in some of our super dom chords, or some of our 9th, 13th chords, and then, you know, bounce back into this. And one thing you might catch here is when I played some of the 5 chord stuff. Now right there, that's a piece of A13. But then, as the riff continued, that's where we departed from it. So there's little hints of some inside stuff that we've already worked with, but it was probably kind of hard to see. So let's run the track again, and I'll mix some inside 7s with these symmetrical chordal harmony ideas. So here we go.